and then people coming in. Oh. I'll probably just start off in Zoom. Right. Hello, hello. Oh, wow. There's always a ton of people in already. Awesome. So welcome everyone. So yeah, welcome in and start settling in. We've got a lot of people tuning in as we sort of speak. So we'll probably just give a minute whilst everyone's sort of coming in. But yeah, we'd love to sort of, say hi to everyone, and if everyone could sort of like say hi a bit, right? And so there's a cool chat in the Zoom. So welcome to Zoom. This is where we'll be doing our exciting meetups tonight. And so there's a cool chat feature. Maybe just sort of let me know in the chat that everything's all okay in the chat section. If you want to leave a message, say hi. Keen to sort of see some people in the Q&A. And then, yeah, we'll just get started in another minute or so. Once we got a few people settling in, right? A few people coming in, and then how's everyone doing? What's today? Today is it's Thursday. So the public holiday sort of messed up this week a bit, but hopefully everyone's doing well. It's a short week this week, so it's gonna be Friday real soon. Yay! And then a nice exciting short little week to sort of get back into the groove of things. But slowly and surely we'll get started in probably another 10 seconds. So we'll just wait for people to sort of come on in, and then we will sort of get happy. Otherwise, I guess we'll get ready to roll. So yeah, hopefully thank you for coming to tonight's session. All right, so my name is Carlton. I'm one of the educators from AIT, and really keen to sort of host this talk tonight. And I'm sure some of you are here to learn what game making is all about. And so I always admire people who sort of make that extra effort to sort of go see talks and then strive to sort of learn more cool things to further educate themselves on how things are done, right? So thanks so much for tuning in after 6 o'clock, and then making your time with us here today. So let's get started. Just before we sort of get into that, I just want to quickly acknowledge the traditional owners of the land in which we're meeting on tonight, even though it's on Zoom nowadays, but still it's a privilege to sort of be here. And just want to recognize the enduring connections of the traditional people of this country. And then, let's pay respects to the elders and ancestors, past and present, of those of the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders. And then, let's continue to uphold their culture and pass on their knowledge and their stories through many ages to come, right? And so otherwise, exciting times tonight. We've got a lot of cool speakers on tonight from games industry to come share some of their stories and background on what they do in games. I'm sure a lot of you are here to learn about games, and I just want to make sure, that you're aware of the chat. It will be really nice to sort of like engage with everyone in the chat. So if everyone just sort of put something in the chat, just want to make sure that there's a little setting there. It's called post to panels and attendees. So just make sure to toggle on to show that it's panels and attendees, so that everyone gets to see everyone's messages, so it feels a bit more lively in here. So just switch that on, and that will be cool. Otherwise, quickly about us. So we're AIT, so we're one of the higher educational providers that offer bachelor degrees in a lot of the digital media areas. And so some people interested in film, and in game making, right, in 2D animation, in 3D design, and also in mobile app development, right? We sort of cover all that. And so, yeah, hopefully tonight you're in the games talk, but we also have animation talk, and we also have the app development and the 3D design talk just passed yesterday. But yeah, if you enjoy this talk tonight, definitely stay tuned for the other talks as well and sign up to those and get to soak up the whole creative industry and learn a few cool things, right? But we've got really exciting guests tonight from the games industry to come talk. So really privileged to have them spend their time and come, yeah, share with us their stories tonight, right? And so we've got three game companies and 4 speakers. So to start off, I just want to introduce Langdon and Jack from Red Cartel. So I guess if Langdon and Jack, want to wave.
There you go.
Who you are. Yep. So yeah, yeah, they're from Red Cartel, which is a really exciting VR company based in Sydney, right? And mixed reality and animations. There's a lot of cool stuff. So they'll be up first sharing what they do and hopefully introduce you to them and get to know a little bit about what we do in the games industry. Right? Secondly, we also have Liminal VR and Nick Zeta from Liminal VR. So where are you, Nick? Hey, there you are. So, yeah, so Nick is the managing director at Liminal VR down in Melbourne, right? And so yeah, really honored to have you on board with us and share with us some of your experiences, right? And last but not least, we have Ruben Morehouse from Nomos Studios.
Hi all.
Hey. You want to give us a wave, Ruben? Just
Here I am.
Over here. The lips. Thank you. So yeah, Ruben's from Nomos Studios, another game dev studio down in Sydney, and they make a lot of cool games that's published on the Switch and mobile app store as well. So excited to hear Ruben share some of his stories with us today, right? So yeah, the general agenda of today is we're going to have our 4 speakers from 3 companies give us a quick rundown of the game studio. And obviously the topic of today is, learn a little bit about what it takes to make it into the games industry, right? So for those who are tuning in, I'm sure some of you are excited to learn about, what's it like studying games, making games, and ultimately get some idea of what it's like to work in games as well. And so hopefully by the end of tonight, you should learn a bit more than you have came beforehand, right? So we're going to have 3 speakers. We're going to have Red Cartel, and then Liminal VR, and then Nomos, and that will probably take about 10 minutes each. But there's also Q&A as well. So definitely in the chat, I want to, hopefully it's not just us talking, but we want to hear from you as well. So definitely throw it into the chat. And then if you have any questions as well, there's also a dedicated Q&A session at the end of every speaker. So just, pop your questions in and we'll try to answer to most of them within the time frame. And then last but not least, towards the end, we also get together, all of us, and we're going to have a panel discussion. And then, we get to sort of have a fun chat on more exciting questions in game making. And if game making is something you're interested in and something that, after all these talks, something that you would be thinking of, I'd like to study in games or learn more about games as well, then after the panel session, there's also a info session to quickly talk about the courses we offer here at AIT as well. So that would be the final bit after the panel session. So definitely stay tuned after all that. So without further ado, how about let's get started, right? And so perhaps first up, we'll introduce once again Langdon, who's the CEO of Red Cartel, and Jack, who's one of the senior game developers there. And so they're going to share with you some of their work. So welcome, Langdon and Jack.
Yeah, thanks, Carlton. Thanks for the intro. Jack's just going to pop up the screen. So we are Red Cartel. Let me just set this up a little bit. We'll give you a bit of a rundown of what we do, a bit of our history, explain a bit of the production process, where we're headed, and we'll show you a couple of videos, and we'll also give you a couple of tips on preparing your resume or your portfolio of how to sort of, best penetrate the market. So I'll just move on to the next one. Yep. So we've been around 20 years or so. We started making game content way back in the day for the original PlayStation and Xbox. These days we're specialists in VR content and a little bit of 3D animation. Most of our work is VR these days with a bit of AR as well. As a small studio, we get a lot of variety. The big projects are the VR arcade games. Simple ones might be little mobile apps and stuff like that. And we occasionally get some pre-rendered stuff because we come from a bit of a pre-rendered 3D animation background. So get some visual effects in, big great horror movies and stuff like that. A little bit of app development. Yes, that's a bit of a snapshot of us. Our clients, most of our work comes from Australia. We get a little bit from overseas, but it's mainly commissioned through Australian clients. A lot of our work comes in from advertising agencies, a lot of the little small VR projects that are sort of, they call them activations, where it's just, it might sort of pop up in a shopping centre to promote a certain brand, or, we do a bunch of work with Shell to do some V8 pit stops for, the supercars, Ferrari, all that sort of stuff. So yeah, most of our work, I'd say, would come through agencies, really. I'll just give you a quick rundown of our structure. So top level is just management, producers, marketing, that sort of stuff. The 3D team handles all things visual, including real-time and pre-rendered stuff. We have a VFX, a post crew that do both real-time and pre-rendered stuff as well with that. The motion team, they look after hand-keyed animation, motion capture, and we're also doing sort of optical motion capture too, where you don't sort of need to wear the suits and stuff like that, but it's a little bit sketchy that at this stage. And then the developers, of course, like front end and back end. Most of our guys are front end. The back end stuff doesn't come in as much, but we tend to freelance that out when we need it done. So that's a little snapshot of that. Yeah, games and gamification. So I'll just briefly run through some of the ones on the left side, and Jack's going to go through some of the ones on the right side. So one of our first projects in VR was a Red Bull VR racing sim that we did quite a while back in 2015. That sort of got us into the VR industry. We took a bit of a gamble with the DK1, ended up being on the Vive. We had to write custom physics for it. It used one of the Logitech racing wheels. Heaps of fun, massive challenge, but you sort of got to dive in and just have a go. And that's how you sort of progress further as a business, I guess. That led us onto the VR pit stops. So we did, the first one was for the V8 supercars. You can probably see it in the little GIF there. We'll play a video of that in a second as well. So we did the supercars. It was down at the Clipsal 500 in Adelaide, set up a full green screen room with 4 players, capture all that sort of stuff, had a leaderboard system. You got sent a little message on your phone when you left with a custom video. That led us to do the Ferrari and the Daytona and the German touring cars. So that's been a lot of fun doing that series of stuff. And the big showcase piece that we've got is Epidemic, which we built in partnership with a company called Samosity. We developed the whole game, built it from scratch. It was a 4-player game that ended up at Playtime over in Haymarket. So 4 players go in there for about 40 minutes. It was a full free roam experience, 2 years in development. It was a huge undertaking, that project. So yeah, that was a great one for us, and has leveraged us into a lot of other projects as a result of that.
Yeah, awesome. I'll talk about some on the right-hand side. So these are more the jobs that were targeted at enterprise, but you can see a lot of gamification coming in to sort of make it fun. The first one being the Melbourne tourism piece, which we did around Christmas time. Pretty much it was a wayfinder sort of tool, where in VR you can look at little interactive points that you can click with on your controller, with a little VR mascot telling you what is going on there during the Christmas period. So it could be shows, movies and stuff like that, which was completely made for the Oculus Quest. We've got the TAFE poultry piece, which is pretty much a simulated chicken dissection, which they had to run through courses at the TAFE. So this was an easy way to get hands-on without having to have a real chicken there in front of you. It was used by the TAFE students to act as a sort of questionnaire / test in itself. So after you dissected the chicken, you had to answer some questions afterwards, which made it a bit fun, and you got some medals and accolades and stuff for it as well, which was cool. And then we've also got the Qantas piece, which is an interactive education simulator, which was made for the Qantas staff. And it was just made pretty much to detail each step of the Qantas delivery network in an immersive way. But yeah, there's some of our pieces. We're going to talk a little more in depth about two of our major jobs, which Landon touched on, which is the VR pit stops and Epidemic. First being, I'll just talk a little bit about Shell V-Power. So this was developed back in 2017 with a team of developers, Nardis. It was a 1-to-4 player multiplayer experience. It was a first of its kind in Australia, which was developed for the HTC Vive, and over the years has now progressed onto Windows Mixed Reality and the Oculus Quest as well. It featured mixed reality capture, which pretty much meant that there were 4 webcams in the room with the players, which recorded their session. And then afterwards, we superimposed the image of them on green screen into the actual gameplay. And we sent that out to them via email and text message, pretty much as they walked out the door, which is a massive undertaking, but a very cool experience and definitely got people talking about it a lot. And also a global leaderboard system. So for every activation of this, which was going on all around the world, Australia, Europe, America, for NASCAR, and like Landon said, German race cars, and the V8s and everything like that, they were all competing pretty much against each other. So no matter where in the world you were competing against everyone else. Stepping on to just a little bit on the production process, which I'm going to touch on each of these pretty lightly. But these are some things that you're going to definitely be looking at if you're getting into the industry or on any job pretty much, and things that need to be taken into account as you step onto that next project. So as for platform, so when entering production for a new job, it's extremely important to take into consideration what platform you'll be targeting. Once you've landed on that platform, it's extremely important to think about cross-platform requirements down the track, your necessity for third-party add-ons, and the hardware limitations you might run into in the future on your chosen platform. As for your engine, there's pros and cons that come with all engines, no matter what you're doing. So if you can pick out the right one before you get started, it'll save you some time and headaches down the track. We primarily work with Unity for most of our jobs, but also we use Unreal when it's required as well. Our decision on which engine we do use on a per job basis comes down to a range of factors, but most importantly, it will be what's the target platform, code complexity versus art requirements, our developer availability and stuff like that. In terms of networking, that's becoming a more sought after skill. So it's definitely something to maybe look into if you haven't already. We used to use UNet within Unity, which is the built-in solution, but now as of 2021, they're rolling out the MLAPI solution, which we're starting to port all of our projects over to. I'll touch on these ones quickly, but the importance of prototyping is extremely important and can't really be overlooked. If you do correct prototyping to begin with, you'll find issues that you weren't aware that were actually there. And it will allow you to test thoroughly without dependence on art, which can allow you to get a lot further without waiting on artists to give you the actual assets. And then, of course, there's the importance of audio and clear instructions for any job or any experience/game, which you need to be aware of. We'll jump to the next one.
Yeah, so what's next for Red Cartel? Wireless VR is a big thing for us. Most of our clients are asking for that sort of stuff. When we need to, we can do tethered backpack solutions. So things are starting to look towards the Focus 3 and also the Quest 2, but Focus 3 has got some eye tracking coming along, which is interesting. We're looking into haptics. We're 3D printing our own stuff, doing our own little sensors with Arduino, motion capture suits for certain simulations. And we're starting to do some weapons training stuff that we can talk more about at another time, because that's a little bit hush-hush at the moment. We'll just skim to the next slide. So portfolio tips is probably where the students probably want to know the most interesting thing. With your portfolio reel, keep it simple. Most producers, directors don't have much time to sort of sit there and watch a 3-minute reel or, deeply analyze something. Just put your best stuff on there. Don't put all the previous projects and all that sort of stuff. There's no real, don't fluff it out with extra stuff to show that you can do a bunch of things. Just focus on your key strengths. Briefly explain your secondary skills. Like if you're a programmer and you know a little bit of compositing, mention that, because down the line, you might have a quiet patch and your producer might say, okay, you can do a little bit of compositing or some audio or something like that. Get an honest opinion on your reel before you send it off or your work. Your mum's always going to tell you that it's awesome, but you really need to, get an honest opinion from somebody that can tell you what looks good and what's a bit crap. describe your passion too, like what you most like out of the industry. Like if you're a coder and you're really into database stuff, make that known, because your boss will start trying to feed you those sort of things as they can. Yeah, be honest about your involvement in a reel or anything like that. We often get tons of reels that have got a group that's worked on them, and it's hard to tell who's done what on that reel. So if you can just sort of isolate that or have a separate note that explains what you did on it. And the last one is potentially consider interning. It's a bit of a gamble for businesses to take on a fresh graduate. So if you're open to doing an intern for a little bit, then they can sort of test you out in a way that's non-destructive and make sure you fit with the crew and all that sort of stuff, and your skills are where you say they are. So yeah, if you're open to interning, that's a great way to sort of get into the industry, I guess. We'll jump across now to our last video before we call it quits. Jack will just explain a bit of this.
Yeah. So Landon touched on this a lot, so I'll be very quick with this. But pretty much Epidemic was our first free roam VR experience that we ran out of Playtime/Time Zone out at Haymarket. This was a 1 to 6 multiplayer experience where everyone was free roaming within a space that was about 17 by 15 meters. This is probably one of the most exciting projects we've ever been able to work on. This was 2 years in development. And as you can see, it was lots of fun working on peripherals like guns with custom 3D mounts for controllers and stuff like that. It was a really great job. But Landon did touch on it a lot just before, so I think we can jump over to questions. Awesome.
Right. Thanks so much for that, Landon and Jack. That was a really insightful glimpse into, I think a lot of people don't realize there's another world to games as well, where a lot of us are gamers coming in thinking, it's the games that we play every day. But in actual reality, like when working in the games industry, there's so many angles that you can do as well. Like for you guys, it's working with these clients that the shell companies, they need a game, right? And then you got these like sort of what do you call that event sort of shooting arcade? I call it arcade. So it's in the arcade, but not like a traditional arcade, right? And you got that happening, and then that's spawning a whole new genre of game making as well. So that's really awesome. And then something that you mentioned that was actually really cool is like focus on your strengths, right? And then that got me wondering, like, what's it like these days? Like you mentioned that the programmer knows a bit of this and a bit of that as well. What's your thoughts on like the specialist versus like a generalist sort of like expertise? Like what do you think? Like, do you look for a specialist or do you look for generalists? Because that's how a lot of students, it's like, I want to learn a bit of everything, but then should we specialize, right?
Yeah, it depends on the size of the company that you're going for. A smaller company will like a bit of a generalist to be able to do a few things, where the bigger guys will just, they'll just be looking for an animator, or they'll just be looking for a back-end dev, or they'll have very specific requirements. But it is good to have a little bit of cross-platform. Like Jack, exceptionally good coder, and he also knows a little bit of audio, and he's good at editing After Effects stuff. So, when it comes time to do a bit of marketing, put a new reel together, Jack can jump in there and do that stuff as well. So, but you don't want to spread yourself too thin either. You don't want to sort of go, I'm a generalist, I can do, all of this sort of stuff, because as you refine your skills in the industry, you are going to become a bit of a specialist in a certain area. It's just sort of how it evolves, really.
Yeah. For sure. And then like coming from Jack as well, who I know you studied the games previously as well, and so and how has those skills helped you? Because I know your strength is in programming, because you're the senior developer, right? But knowing all the like video editing and animation and a bit of the graphic side of things, how has that helped you handle like other aspects that gets thrown your way?
It's helped quite a lot, extremely, like a massive amount. Like Landon said, in a smaller team size, it pays massive dividends to just be aware of in terms of arts, 3ds Max, modeling, texturing, shaders, stuff like that. Just having a general knowledge across allows you to have those easy conversations with the artists where it's not too scary, and you can start to think about how you need to optimize things, which as we're sort of proceeding further into the future and VR is becoming much more prominent, especially standalone VR. Optimization and stuff like that's becoming increasingly important. So just having the base understanding to know how many polys something should have, or what polys even mean, and why is too many a bad thing and stuff like that, pays off massively, especially around things as well outside of art, but like, let's say like the Adobe suite, graphic design, video editing are all very useful tools and stuff that you'll use all the time. Being comfortable with Photoshop and stuff like that allows me to even edit a texture or something like that on the fly if I need to. I don't need to go to an artist, so I can take care of all of that myself. And yeah, just really sort of trying to make yourself quite a general jack of all trades, but that does come over time, and it's definitely not something that needs to happen straight out of uni or college or anything like that, but it's definitely something that I think you'll naturally pick up in the professional environment.
No, that's a really good point. Thanks for that. And yeah, because like we got students, studying games. I just want to study games. But at the same time, when you learn a little bit about other things as well, from the graphic design, the 3D side of things, the assets and all that, that really, games encompass everything, right? And so having those skills just makes you feel more comfortable in the realm. We've got some cool questions as well from the chat. So yeah, definitely everyone should be asking questions, because now's the time to ask some questions, right? So we got Joseph asking what are the requirements of a game designer, and then subjects ATAR wise, we can answer that in the end as well when we talk a bit more about the courses and stuff. So we'll probably leave that to the end. But and then we'll do 2 questions. And then there's also the Unreal 5 questions, which is really interesting. So let's talk about game designer then. So what are the requirements, or what do you look for in a game designer?
For us, I guess we do thorough code reviews when we get somebody into. We want to make sure that they're not just getting to the end goal, that they're getting there in a clean way, because some people have some nasty spaghetti code and it's just hard to work in a team like that. So, if you're going to be doing a little test, or, we have little test pieces that we give people and whatnot, and we analyze their code and there's train of thought to get to that particular point, and maybe part of their commenting in their code and stuff like that. So, and knowing a bit, like Jack said, knowing about the other facets of the industry. You don't want to sort of get a programmer that doesn't really know much about 3D and doesn't know how to import the right asset or update a shader or do that sort of stuff. So being a bit well-rounded to start with is good, and then you can sort of refine your craft as you go through there, I guess.
Nice. So essentially, like knowing a little bit about all aspects of the game development process makes you a better designer, even though you're not like specialist in it, but at least you know how it works, right? And then that allows you to sort of like make decisions and improve your game design.
That's right. And that makes you more useful to that company as you go.
Yeah, absolutely. I think as well, when you hear game designer, a lot of people jump straight for a GDD, a game design document. And look at that and being, I need to be able to, if I'm going to be a game designer, I just need to be able to write a really fluent sort of game design document. But there's just so much more to it than that, which you sort of learn very quickly once you step into a professional environment. But it's just, you got to get outside that scope of just the GDD. And it's more, just getting sort of interested in every facet of the game industry pretty much.
Awesome. So it's definitely more than just the theory, but knowing a bit about the practical of how the games are made makes you a better game designer. And so one last question, because everyone's seen the Unreal 5 Unreal Engine 5 trailer, and what are your thoughts on it? Are you thinking of giving it a try as part of the work that you do?
Yeah, I mean, for the right project, for sure. It's because most of our stuff's in VR. We're probably not going to be going down that path, to be honest, because it requires too much juice to give you a great result. But and they're doing some great stuff with character things and all that sort of gear as well, as people have probably seen. So for the right project, absolutely, but maybe not for VR.
Or maybe the VR has to step up their game, like the VR tech is, now we need to handle Unreal Engine and get all the realistic high poly stuff in. That's their next frontier, right? Cool. Now, awesome. Thanks so much for answering those questions. And then we have a few more questions, but we'll probably move on to the next talk and you can save them and then we'll answer it a bit later on in the chat. So thank you again, Langdon and Jack.
Thank you.
I appreciate your insight. Okay. Otherwise, let's move on to our next talk. So we've got Nick from Liminal VR, and he's going to show us a little about what they do. And then, I'll hand it over to Nick Buzeta. And take us away, Nick.
Excellent. Thanks, Carlton. So my name's Nick. I'm the managing director and co-founder of Liminal VR. We're a virtual reality company that in a way, like it feels like we're a bit of a dinosaur for the VR industry. We've been around, not as long as Red Cartel, but right at the front end of the second wave of VR, where we also work with the DK1 and completely understand, Langdon, where you're coming from as to all the challenges that came along with that. But yeah, so our company was, I guess my passage into the games industry was a little bit unconventional in that I was working full time for 8 years as a commercial IP lawyer, intellectual property lawyer, focusing in tech. And I just got to a point where, working long hours and lots of contracts and major transactions, I wanted to do something radically different. So I, met my business partner, Damien, and we set up Liminal as a, and moved, completely into the games industry without knowing anything about game development and just sort of learnt on the ropes. So that was a stressful time, especially learning on the ropes in VR when VR didn't have any standards or reliable hardware or anything in place, any infrastructure. So we've been through the grinder a little bit, sort of getting to this point. Managed to scale our team organically to a team of 14 now. We've got what you'd expect in the games industry. We've got developers and project managers and 3D artists and animators and sound designers and the like. What makes us different as a company is that we have a dedicated research focus. So the fundamental premise of our company is that we consider that there's something categorically different about virtual reality to other technologies. Fun things are really fun, scary things are very scary. VR is different, it has this emotional effect on people that's different to conventional gaming technologies or other technologies. So we wanted to focus in on that. So we hired in addition to a development team, a team of researchers, including a behavioral neuroscientist and 2 psychologists, one being a clinical psychologist. And we've really taken a research-driven approach to game design, and I guess with a focus primarily on the ability of virtual reality to induce emotional and cognitive states in people. So we've been looking at VR design, looking at experimental research, conducting our own, documenting design methodologies and evaluation processes. And the culmination of all of that is the Liminal platform, which is currently on App Lab. We're working with Oculus to get it on the Oculus Store very soon, which is a platform of short virtual reality experiences to empower people to change how they feel and perform. So we're focused squarely on short virtual reality experiences designed to induce emotional and cognitive states. So that's been our longer term ambition as a company. It's a dedicated platform. We've been working with AIT and a whole bunch of other partners, both in Australia and internationally to collaborate around our research and create sort of engaging interactive content that goes on our platform. A parallel side, I guess, just like Red Cartel, we do a lot of bespoke work for clients. We've done marketing experiences and brand activations, and we apply for a lot of grants, and we do a lot of training. So we've worked with some ASX listed companies building hard skills training programs. We worked for 18 months with Costa, the mushroom agricultural company, and we did a mushroom harvesting training company. We're teaching mushroom harvesters through VR using an HTC Vive Pro how to work a commercial mushroom bed and focusing on things like technique. So I guess as bizarre as that, and we also do like soft skills training as well using mocap and facial capture systems. We're working. We won a grant with WorkSafe Victoria, and we've been working for the last 15 months. Creating scripted scenarios with, I guess, virtual humans and creating scenarios where teaching managers how to manage young people in the workplace with a view to promoting their well-being. So that's one side. I'm here primarily to talk about the Liminal platform. this is just, you know, acknowledging where VR is going. I guess, you know, lots of big money is going into the tech. Everyone knows who this guy is. Like him or loathe him, he's driving the industry forward or backwards, depending on your perspective. But a lot of people you know, when we started, most people didn't even know what VR was. Now, you know, a lot of people we come across, most people have come across an Oculus Quest 2 and standalone headsets are game changers for the industry. It's now a lot more simple to bring from a distribution point of view, and a lot more people have their own headsets, and it's not as cumbersome a tech as it once was. So for our company, we spend a lot of time with the Liminal platform, working with partners, sharing our research. And so we've been working with AIT and I guess collaborating with students to build experiences with a view to hopefully getting it into a high enough quality state where it can get onto the Liminal platform. Overall, we've you know, increased moods. You know, we're tracking pre and post emotional states, and we've seen a big lift across the content on our platform towards positive moods. We've got 4 categories of experience: calming, energizing, pain relief, and awe-inspiring experiences. They've all got their own design do's and don'ts. And we've also got a lab where we conduct experiments. So we're always testing different design approaches and how people respond at scale to a whole bunch of different things. And that includes color and motion testing, testing of particle systems, direction and pace of motion, and how that affects people emotionally. And over time, we're documenting more and more design standards, and we're formalizing that in a web-based design manual called the PsychDocs, which AIT students have got access to, where basically, if you wanted to create an experience from one of those 4 categories on the Liminal platform, we've got a whole wealth of information guided by 6 years of research that's available to students who want to get involved. So the Liminal platform has, I guess we've got the 4 categories and 4 different arenas. This is the calming arena, energizing, pain relief, and awe categories. And then this is the lab. It's a little bit more filled out these days compared to when the slide was, you know, we took these slides. We're sort of bordering on around 50 experiences now on the Liminal platform, and you know, they're all sort of rated for their, you know, enjoyability and emotional effects. And to that end, we've got different categories of psychometrics that we've developed to track mood. You know, I guess everyone's sort of familiar with the classic emoticons, and so, you know, we use a lot of that. So you know, we're tracking different emotional states. So this is for calm and energy. So we track sort of what people's emotional state was pre and post, and then that feeds into an algorithm which we use to rank content on our platform. We've got the pain relief category where we're tracking different categories of pain as well. We're about to do a clinical trial with Monash University across, you know, at Peninsula Health with across 300 patients who've just undergone a laparoscopy, post-operative surgery. So getting a lot of academic interest and from the medical sector, and we're also measuring awe-inspiring experiences as well. And so if you create an experience on the Liminal platform, you'll get your own experience panel where it gives you attribution or track the emotional effects of the experience that you create. Give a little bit of, you know, of the description and some screenshots of your experience, and give people a general sense of what it is that they're going to experience when they're going in. So this is the PsychDocs. So if you wanted to partner with Liminal as an AIT student, you would, I guess, the first thing you'd have to do is work out, okay, what's the creative that I want to develop, and what emotional outcome am I targeting? And then we've got like different, I guess, you know, the 4 different categories, and we've got different design guides around the different categories. So awe is like one of the most popular experience categories on the Liminal platform. There's something about VR where you can introduce a sense of scale and vastness and spaciousness and surprise, where you're breaking down people's, I guess, mental schema of how the world works, and you create this need for accommodation. So that has proved to be like a really popular category on the Liminal platform, and people are creating awe-inspiring experiences, which gives you a lot of creative freedom to break the rule book of the natural laws of physics. But like, we have a whole range of different, we break down VR design into a whole range of different subcategories, whether it's, you know, wanting to color design, or if you're choosing a color palette, or using motion, or the amount of visual complexity, or how to create soundscapes, or music design music, or you want to introduce a breathing simulation, or what have you. There's a whole range of different types of guidance that we provide in our site docs. And I'm going to skip through this because we don't really have much time. But yeah, I guess one of the things that you know, we've learned over time is that there's a lot of different ways. If you want to change someone emotionally, there's a lot of different ways to you know, climb the same mountain. So, for example, if you want someone to feel calm, it's not like it's not all beaches and Zen gardens. Like, there's a whole range of different approaches that people make. Likewise with energizing experiences as well. But like in general, for example, calming environments would typically have muted blue colors and slow motion, and you know, you might have a breathing simulation, and you know, a more narrow point of focus within a VR scenario, and you're probably, if you can execute that well, regardless of what your concept is, you're probably going to go a long way to calming someone down. Whereas energizing experiences, as you imagine, are more interactive and using more saturated colors. So this is Colorgize. Carlton was very prominent, I guess, in bringing this one out. This is an AIT experience, and it's actually the best performing energy experience on the Liminal platform so far. Talia and Gabor have who are AIT students, worked on this under his guidance in collaboration with Liminal, and you know, you're firing like these electric, you're more like throwing these electric orbs in across the room, and you're hitting the environment, and different things are lighting up and start to, you know, animate, and the environment gets more vibrant and colorful over time, and it's tested really well. People absolutely love it. And I guess it draws on a similar concept to Splat, which is something that Liminal created a couple of years ago, where you're in this void, and you're firing paint you know, paint blotches of paint around a room, and it's hitting these floating blobs of paint and splattering into the environment, and gradually it's getting a bit crazy, and the colors start changing, and you start like to see what the environment is that you're standing in. There's a whole range of different things. Pain relief is about you know, using principles of distraction and maintaining a cognitive load. So you think fun, interactive games keep people actively engaged and cognitively attending to the gameplay, and they forget about their pain. You might have a wound dressing or an open fracture or something like that, and your subjective experience of pain goes down just by simply distracting people and making them focus on something else. So you know, we've done a lot of work in pain relief and awe experiences. Again, as I mentioned at the beginning, you're playing with scale and vastness, and it opens up a whole range of different sort of creative possibilities as to how to make people feel a sense of awe in VR. So I guess for me, like, one of my main motivations for chatting here, you know, at this forum is Liminal works very closely with AIT, and we love working with AIT students, and it's been very successful, our partnership over the years. And I guess it's a call out to any students who want to you know, work closely as part of a student project with an industry partner. We're very keen to collaborate, and yeah, and if it's something that you feel like you'd like to get involved in, and you know, maybe as part of a team, as part of a project, want to create an experience for the Liminal platform, you know, we'd love to hear from you. how am I going for time, Carlton?
Yeah, perfect. Thank you so
Excellent.
much, Nick. And yeah, thank you for sharing so much about what you do in the Liminal platform. And yeah, really appreciate the opportunity for AIT students to get to work with Liminal, because part of what we do at AIT as well is most of our project briefs, we want it to be like industry briefs, right? And part of that is to get industry to sort of tell us to do something and we'll do it. And then like they give us a brief and then we work on it. And that gives students a great experience in terms of plus your mentorship as well, because like not only do they get the teachers' feedback, but then they also get you guys' feedback as well. And then that they take it more seriously. It's like, oh God, Liminal said they need to do this. And then they and because of that, they actually do much better work as well. And so it's really exciting stuff. Yeah, we got a few more questions, and coming back to even Aiden, who also has a VR question. So we'll go back to the Aiden's question in terms of common challenges in VR, which is still perfect for you since you guys do VR. So yeah, what are some common challenges you experience when making VR games?
I guess one of the biggest challenges, and I guess it depends who you're creating it for. Like often when you're dealing with a client, there's this effect, what I call the VR effect, and they get very carried away and they've got very high expectations as to all the amazing things that you can do in VR. And so like it's always, well, for me, like the first thing is how do you control the scope? And this isn't really just a factor for VR, it's for all game development, and something that I think is something that not even just students, but like industry professionals are constantly struggling with is how do you keep your goals for a project narrow enough so that they're actually achievable. Like everyone wants to create a AAA game and it all seems awesome and but in the real world you've got limited time, limited budget, limited resources, depending on the makeup of your team, limited skills, and so you need to work out, okay, what is it that we can do with the time and the budget that we have, and sort of try and control the scope and not allow yourself to drift and get carried away and go off into other directions. So that's one option, one thing. The other is I guess the biggest challenge probably as related to all that is there's a lot of unexpected curveballs that you can find along the way that can completely derail your project, in VR, because it's constantly changing. And so, like for example, with the Liminal platform, we spent a lot of time creating this reflection system on the ground, like in the main home arena, and it has this beautiful sort of reflective effect, and we're really happy with it. But then we port the platform to another headset, and just because of idiosyncrasies between the different headsets, it breaks. So then for the next headset, we spend 3 or 4 weeks trying to fix that, port to another headset that breaks. And so having to sort of work cross-platform across different hardware is an ongoing challenge. The other is obviously it's more of a dilemma than a challenge in that when you're building primarily for standalone headsets, but with a view to you want to build a long-term scalable product. How do you what do you do? Like, do you focus? You've got to optimize an experience and bring down the fidelity so it can perform at 72 frames per second on a standalone Oculus Quest 2 headset. But you see these amazing breakthroughs with Unreal Engine 5, and you can see we know that, for example, technologies like 5G around the corner, and that's going to have implications for how many pixels you can push. With you're all of a sudden leveraging supercomputers in the cloud rather than having to render everything on device once that becomes a reality. And so building for a long-term scalable product is difficult, because how much you're on the one hand having to optimize it on the hardware that we have so that it runs, but also maintain a certain aesthetic and quality that is going to stand up when when you've got a mass consumer market and you know, people have got much better hardware than what's available right now. So that's an ongoing dilemma.
For sure. And so, yeah, hopefully that's a good insight for everyone into the world of game making, right? Sometimes your game is working perfectly, usually, you know, on the PC or the device that you're working on. And then suddenly you jump to another device and everything's broken. Such is the story of Cyberpunk and the game once they sort of put on the console. So yeah, it's a horror story that we all battle. But we got some really good questions here. But Celine, I see a question as well, and then Toby. But these questions I think are really good for the panel discussion later. So I might sort of leave that on a bit later on if that's okay. And then also Joseph. Joseph's got a really good question. So if I can spend a quick minute on that as well, in terms of because you guys got a psychologist on your team, right? And so Joseph asked, in terms of the research team, do the creative and development team have to know psychology in game making?
No. So our what we're trying to do is democratize it. So there's a lot of information out there that I'd say almost certainly only a handful of game developers in the world would even know exists. You know, so like there's all these ways of thinking about game design and game development that I guess, you know, the information is out there, published in some random article that, you know, that no one knows exists. And even if they know it exists, they don't know how to read it and synthesize that information properly so that they can actually apply it in a game development context. So what the role of our research team, one of the roles of our research team is to translate that research into something that is digestible and actually useful for a you know, for a game developer with no formal training in you know, the psychological sciences. So that it's really like you then think you don't necessarily need to know all the evidence behind a certain approach. It's just understanding, okay, these are the do's and don'ts, and these are the implementation guidelines that Lil have created. And I guess we are constantly looking at ways to refine and update and validate all these different principles. So yeah, so the goal is not to, you don't need a PhD in psychology to work with Liminal or use Liminal research. Our role is to make that research accessible so that, you know, the developer can then sort of run with it and you know, create something cool.
Sure. So yeah, I hope that answered that question for you, Joseph. So yeah, it's something that's good to have and is an extra pro, but then yeah, games can be it's sort of like having a warlock on the team, but you can still do good stuff with just your healer, tank, and damage, and then warlock.
That's right. Sometimes all you need is an axe, but there are ways of using the axe you may not have thought about.
For sure. Now, thanks so much for sharing your company with us, and then appreciate your time, and hopefully everyone learned a bit more cool stuff about games, right? So thank you. How's everyone feeling so far? Let me know in the chat. Throw something in the chat. Maybe just give me a 1 in the chat as well if you're liking this so far, just so I can see a bit more engagement. Yes, we see a few more 1s in the chat. So thank you so much for tuning in. We've got one more speaker left. And so we've got Ruben from Nomos Studios, right? And so he's gonna show us some of the stuff that they work on in their company. So yeah, really appreciate everyone's time and tuning in. And so yeah, stay tuned and let's take it over to Ruben.
All right, hopefully that's coming through. Hi everyone, great talks so far. So thanks everyone for setting me up with such excellent material for the previous 2 speakers. I think, well, first I'll introduce myself in a moment, but I just kind of want to sum up, I guess, what this talk is going to be about. I'm going to be going over some of the stuff that we've done at Nomos Studios and how I personally got into games. And the undercurrent of this talk is going to be the question of what is games? Because I know when I was younger and thought, oh, I really want to work in games, or specifically I thought I want to be a game designer, I had a picture in my head of the types of things that meant. But hopefully from the kind of variety and breadth of the work that all of the other panelists and myself do, it's kind of been demonstrated to you that working in games is quite a varied field. So the question of what is games, and specifically what kind of games would you want to or be happy to work on, is one that I think is an important question to think of an answer to. So that's what we're going to be talking about. But let me start by introducing myself. That's a picture of me with shorter hair, back before I knew that I liked having much longer hair. I'm the director of No More Studios. We are a game development studio and consultancy that's been around for 4 or 5 years. Pretty small. We've got about 6 to 7 staff, so we're a relatively small studio. We make games for gamers, for consumers, people to play games on their Switch or on their PC or their mobile or what have you. We also make games for companies, so companies that are trying to do business cases like some of the ones we've heard about from Red Cartel or Liminal or other things, education, training, all that kind of stuff. I'm going to show off some of the projects that we've worked on because I think it's useful to just see a bit of the breadth of some of the types of games that we've done. So up in the top left, you can see Duped. That's a very traditional indie game kind of game. Released on Nintendo Switch, on Steam as well. Very much a game. And this is the kind of thing I was working on when I first entered the game industry. I was a hobbyist kind of making games that I thought, oh, this is the kind of game that I want to be making as a game developer. I then kind of moved on to games like the one in the bottom right-hand corner, you'll see there. Still a game, but this one's more of an installment, right? It's on PC and also on arcade cabinets. So moving a bit more away from what I had in my mind of traditional games. And then in the bottom left, you can see Real Deal Bridge, which is effectively an online bridge, the card game bridge playing platform that exists for people. Usually, if you know people who play bridge, they're usually senior, although that's not always the case, to play bridge online during COVID. And I want to bring these up because these are all obviously undeniably games, but some of them aren't maybe what you might think of when you think of becoming a game developer. So that would be a useful example. And this isn't even talking about some of the more technical stuff that we've done. Real Deal Bridge is a game where you're playing cards, but also has a big server that operates behind it that we had to develop. That does things like social functionality, managing user profiles, managing partners and clubs and all that stuff. Game development is a very broad term. And I think when people first enter the games industry, I know I definitely did, you think of game development in just one specific sense. So I think one of the big things that I can do, and the other panelists have already been doing, is set up the breadth of the opportunities that might be available to you to think about. So let me talk a bit more about my journey to get into the games industry. So I did a Bachelor of Computer Science doing programming at Sydney University back in 2014. Then out of uni, I worked for 6 months making educational games for the ABC. I went and worked in an augmented reality hardware startup that's now defunct called Meta in America, which was quite fun. Then I started doing a teaching degree before moving on to teaching kids how to make games. I worked as a holiday camp instructor, teaching kids to make games at after school sessions before then finally going and starting my own game dev studio. And I want to outline this journey because I think it's important for 2 reasons. One, I've already kind of been alluding to, of like, what is games, right? Which of these things would you consider being games? Obviously, starting a game studio is one. Teaching game development to kids in after school camp, maybe. Working at an AR startup. I mean, I wasn't doing game specific work, but I was working in Unity while I was there. So not games specifically, but obviously games adjacent. I just think it's interesting to look at this and see, well, what kinds of things would I actually want to do in my career? The other important thing to note here is, while some of these might not seem relevant to what I do today, one of the really important things that I think is very pivotal for people entering the games industry, especially if you're a game designer, but for anybody, is to have a breadth of different experiences. Things like teaching children how to play game or play and make games, building AR. These are all things that are part of the kind of patchwork quilt of skills that I've picked up over my life that now make me a better developer and designer. So I think that's a useful thing to keep in mind, just because especially for a designer, when you're designing a game, the more breadth of experience you have within games, but also outside of games, it will lead you to be a better, more well-rounded, more useful developer, designer, whatever you want to think about it as. So yeah, I think that's one of the major things that I really want to make sure I'm conveying as I go through here. I think we can go back and look at some of these projects that we've worked on. I think especially Jack and Lantern went into some of the technical things like engines and some of that great stuff, which I think is really useful to know. It's worth pointing out all of the projects we've worked on here, most of them, 90% of the projects we work on are built in Unity. So if you're looking for kind of technical skills that would help you in the industry, Unity and Unreal are great places to start. But they're not the only places. For example, I touched on Real Deal Bridge that has a big backend server. A lot of the other work we do is much more traditional backend or even front end web style development. So those are all great skills to learn as well. And then there's other kinds of adjacent things like app design or even gamification, taking games frameworks and games kind of mindsets and ways of thinking and applying them to non-traditional games experiences. Anyway, I think the core question to ask is, what does games mean to you? What would you be happy with doing as your job? I originally thought I wanted to just make indie platformers, but I've come to realize there's a much wider breadth of things to do and a much more rewarding breadth of things to do. I now am a developer that mainly spends time working with clients and helping the people around me, my employees or other people that we're working with, to create really awesome things. And I find that very satisfying, being able to see these creative projects come out of effectively thin air. I do think there's also a trade-off for you to consider, because I know in Sydney, game design positions, and especially junior game design positions, are very, very competitive. So it's worth thinking about what other things you might want to try out as a way to get your exposure into the industry, get exposure of a number of different skills, and get your foot in the door. I think there's a lot of people looking for very, very skilled developers, programmers, artists, what have you, and not as many people looking for junior entry-level game designers. So I would encourage you to think about what types of things you'd be keen to work on. Having said that, I do want to kind of touch on hiring conceptually, because that is something I do a fair amount. I hire juniors. We have, sometimes we hire graduates straight out of university. So I think it's useful for me to touch on the kinds of things that we really look for. Number one is having hobbies that you have outside of just gaming. I can't count the number of times where people have applied and they just list the types of games that they like to play or their games experience. And that's great. And that's very useful. But I think it's true to say that almost everybody that works in games enjoys playing games, right? Or has enjoyed playing games. So it doesn't really help to differentiate you, which really is the goal when you're applying to a job. The other big thing is a lot of applicants that we get have made some projects, mainly courses like at AIT will have you put together projects with your group work and stuff like that. And that's very good, and it's a very good start. But definitely the more things that you've made, especially if they're released on things like Steam maybe, or even just kind of the Android App Store and stuff like that, it really helps set you apart. So working with teams, having completed projects you've released, these are all the kinds of things that I think really help sell you as somebody entering the industry, somebody that's worth hiring. So that's pretty much all I wanted to talk about. A bit of stuff that we've done, some of the work we've done, Unity stuff mainly, some of the different pathways, my personal experience, and the kinds of things that we look for when we're hiring. So that's my little spiel. If anyone has any questions, pop them in chat, I suppose. Or just reach out and email me or shoot me a tweet. That works too.
Yeah, so everyone definitely, take a photo of this email and then, email Ruben and get in touch. And then I'm sure he'll be really glad to, let you fill you in on more cool, exciting game stuff. But thanks so much for sharing what you guys do at Memo Studio. Ruben, I didn't know that Beam Team made it to the arcades. That's so exciting.
It did, yes.
Yeah.
Which is very fun. It's a different experience having one of your games turn into an arcade cabinet.
I know.
I'm sure some of the other panelists who do more installations are familiar with that, more familiar than I am being a programmer, but it's very fun.
Yeah, like that's like a rare frontier. Like it's exciting to get your game onto like a console or even mobile and then even VR. But then arcade, it's like, well, that's like a new frontier that not many people get to sort of tap on, and that sounds much more exciting. So great. Otherwise, I think you're the perfect candidate for the two questions that we sort of missed out, because like
Sure.
Toby had a question in terms of marketing for small indie companies. Like what sort of marketing strategies do you guys do to market your games.
Sorry, I'm just scrolling up to find. There we go, Toby. Perfect. Scrolling past all the ones in chat. It's a great question. How to, I had that experience of being a small team / indie developer when I was starting out as well. And marketing is this big kind of gray cloud that hangs over you, where everyone talks about how important it is, but it's really, really hard to actually do. I don't necessarily have great advice for you, because I think when you're a small developer, there's kind of just an acceptance you have to have of, you can do marketing things. You can do things like, make GIFs and Reddit threads and all that kind of stuff, which I think is useful and has the chance of making your game go viral. But realistically, the best thing you can do as an indie developer to improve the marketing is work with someone who knows what they're doing there. So I know there are kind of marketing consultants that you can find that will help you market your games, or even a publisher theoretically. That does have obviously an associated cost. So if you're working on a shoestring budget, doing things like making GIFs and videos and trailers and all that stuff is great and can really help your game be a success. But it's worth noting that that's a skill set to acquire as well. So if you're focused on becoming a really, really good game developer and making a really, really good game, you might not necessarily have the skills to do that. And you might need to look elsewhere. So I wouldn't be averse to at least starting those conversations with some of these kind of consultancies and stuff that are out there.
For sure. And, me coming a bit from the indie side of things and seeing the marketing as well, it's like, because us as game devs, we're good at game dev, right? Our years are spent sort of making games. And so at the same time, on the other front, there's someone that has years spent on marketing, right? And it's just that equivalent level of like skill, right? And so obviously game devs can jump in and kind of do marketing, but it's almost like, someone that's full on marketing.
Yeah.
They know a lot of things that we game devs don't know.
Yeah, they'll have a lot of contextual experience. So maybe if I do kind of want to give some tips for indie devs on a shoestring budget, because I've been in that world and you can't just afford to hire a consultant or anything.
Yeah.
I would say communities, market yourself in communities is a good way to kind of try it out. So find games communities that you like, or even people that you like, and ask, hey, where do you find out about games? Ask if they have any great communities that you can share your game in, things like that. Don't be too overly aggressive with self-promotion, but try and find communities that you can post your game and see if people like it, and they might do the work to kind of grassroots marketing it for you.
Awesome. And then, since you mentioned hiring as well, Celine, this is your question. Do you find that there's like a specific period when you hire the most, or like does it just come randomly?
Interesting question. I think, we're obviously a pretty small studio, so our hiring is based on projects that come up, and this might be the same for Ray Cartel and Liminal as well. When projects come in that mean they need to hire, that might be the driver. I know for some studios, e.g. like Wargaming in Sydney, they have a seasonal internship program that I think starts intake in February or March. So for bigger companies, that's probably more of a thing, but for my size, it's just we reach out and post job ads whenever we need it, basically.
No, that's a really good point, because Wargaming, they have this sort of like, the main game sort of set in stone, and then they can do that seasonal thing. Whereas like the smaller studios, because projects come regularly every month, every 2 months, every 3 months, then the hiring process is very dynamic that way, right? So you're always, and the good thing is that means throughout the year, maybe Celine, that you'll also see job posts regularly from all different studios with different projects happening all over the place. So no, thanks so much for your talk, Ruben. That was awesome. So otherwise, I guess, how's everyone doing? Is everyone still here? Give me a 1 in the chat again. Hopefully everyone's still lively, and let me know if people have been enjoying it and finding this useful, right? Because the world of games is a lot of things that, from playing games, you really don't really know, but in terms of the making game side of things, it's like, a whole new frontier, right? So, well, we got a Toby with a hipster too, nice. So anyways, I guess we'll bring back everyone from the panel back in, and I guess if there's any questions looming in your mind now, leave it in the chat, because now we're entering the panel discussions, and so now's the opportunity if you have any questions that you might like to ask. Let me see. Well, we've got some questions, and so let's go through Reese, right? And so what made you make the switch from teaching to starting a studio? So I'm currently teaching kids to code myself. yeah, I think that's a question for you, Ruben.
Yeah. That's a good question. I just kind of have always liked to do different things. So teaching was just something that I had always thought about doing. The thing that I like about games is interacting with people and helping them. I mean, it was kind of me realizing that I liked making games because I liked people engaging with the things that I'd done, but I also liked helping people make cool things. So it kind of revealed that maybe I should be teaching kids is kind of the baby version of starting a studio, I suppose. Right? It was teaching kids to make games and then or make the same game over and over again, usually. But then moving to starting a studio was doing that, but on a scale of kind of more creative and doing kind of more different things.
For sure. And there's two sides, right? There's helping people make games, which we're also passionate about, but then at the same time we have that itch to go make games as well. And so moving to the studio allows us to do that, right? Otherwise, I just want to quickly welcome back everyone, really. And so in case everyone's forgotten, we've got Landon from Red Cartel, we got Jack from Red Cartel, we got Nick from Liminal, and then obviously Ruben, who's still with us at Nomos. And so, yeah, definitely throw some questions our way. We're opening to the next 10 minutes. It will be a open Q&A. So just throw lots of questions in the chat and let's get to it, shall we? But yeah, we've got Angelina say, what games inspired you to pursue game development, right? So everyone have one game that sort of like, oh yeah, that's the game that really inspired me to get excited making games. Right? Maybe start off with you, Langdon.
Yeah, man.
Are you a
Tomb
gamer,
Raider for
Langdon?
me.
Oh wow!
Yeah, it was way back the original Tomb Raider series on the first PlayStation. That really inspired me to get into 3D. So my background's in more 3D than it is in coding. And I love that stuff. And years later, I was working on some content with Plastic Wax on a Tomb Raider game, and I was like, man, I've come full circle. I'm here.
Wow,
awesome.
nice.
So yeah, that's what inspired me back in the day.
Wow, that must be so cool to get to work on Tomb Raider again. It's like, wow. I have a friend who was my WoW League buddy in World of Warcraft, and she's like, I want to work in Blizzard one day. And we're like WoW buddies back in high school, and now she's working at Blizzard. And so like, wow, it must be so cool to work on the childhood games, right? What about you, Jack?
So when I was younger, I had Kingdom Hearts as a massive game I used to play on the PS2. So I got that one, and that really sort of piqued my interest in terms of games and RPGs and stuff like that. I played through that a million times. Growing up onto MMO RPGs, I was massive into RuneScape for quite a bit. I think just the amount of stuff that you're able to do in this massively expansive world and all of that was really intriguing as well. And then in more recent times, definitely on the League of Legends sort of thing as well. And that sort of opened my eyes once again to like the multiplayer aspect, and yeah, just found it extremely interesting. And that sort of, brought me up to now.
Nice. Kingdom Hearts. I'm sure like some people here also are Kingdom Hearts fans. And so the next gen of Kingdom Hearts players might become the next gen of game developers. Kingdom Hearts 4 players. Nick, how about you?
Yeah, well, for me, it's interesting. I was like pathologically obsessed with Doom back in the day, and I was playing Doom 2 on bulletin boards, with a 2400 BPS modem that before there was even such thing as the internet, and I, got into like level editing and creating my own levels and having other people play those levels and, have to shoot them out. And I knew all the tricks because I designed the level. So I thought that was cool. And and so like then I realized at one stage in my life, I've got a problem. I'm playing too many games and I'm not like doing other things. So I literally went cold turkey on games for about 10 years that pulled me back. And then starting Liminal, I ended up like listening to John Carmack a lot, who is like Facebook CTO, and it was only afterwards, after like listening to him for about 6 months, this genius oracle who knew everything about everything, relating to games and VR. I only later realized that he was the guy that created Doom, which was so ahead of its time in the day. So yeah, Doom's the one for me. Like, it's a pretty simple answer.
Nice. Well, there you go, everyone. If you have a problem playing games, who knows? One day you might be, managing a game studio. So yeah, all our game making is, paying off. And then Ruben, last but not least, what's your game?
I mean, a few of the ones already mentioned, definitely, but probably I would shout out Minecraft as just a game that both I played a lot, but then also was kind of very entry level logic, programming, robotics kind of stuff. So I found that a pretty good gateway for me into starting to make my own things.
Nice. And yeah, Minecraft's used a lot in primary school now to sort of get everyone into the logical thinking and stuff, right? Speaking of logical thinking, Angelina had a question about Pursuit game develop. Oh no, that was the question already. I mean, Tristan had a thing for coding. We just want to do a quick one on this. For game design, do you need coding skill? Maybe Jack, I'll throw this at you. For game design, do you need coding skills?
Yeah, sure. So I would say it's not completely necessary, because obviously there's a multifaceted sort of thing. So you can look at it in terms of, I'm an artist, so that's one way. You can even look at it as, I'm a great storyteller, so I can contribute in terms of molding a really great story that can be moved into a game. So I'd say, no, it's definitely not necessary. It's just, how do you look at game design and what you think personally fulfills the game design role. So it's just the way you look at it, but I would say no, because there's a lot more to game design than code. There's a lot more to it than just also creating a story or game designing, if like you say it like that. So yeah, no, I'd say no.
And then, you can also go the art route as well. So be game designer and into the art or the level designing, and sort of there's a lot of other complementary stuff than not necessarily coding. So that's excellent. Cool. Well, otherwise, I guess I'll jump into, if there's no other questions. I've got some questions, but yeah, more just about, I've got a few questions here because we got a lot of aspiring people that's interested in either studying games or getting into the games industry. And then one of them obviously is, sometimes the things we're passionate about, but there might be some, a resistance from, often parents. I come from, Asian descent, where the parents want you to do something way different than game development. And then, yeah, how's that experience? Do you have any sort of pressure behind the scenes, or some, family not sort of wanting you to do games, and then, or were they very supportive? And then how has that, because we got some students here that want to do their passion, but at the same time they got, family pressures maybe. So maybe Ruben, throw one on you.
Yeah, sure. So when I was picking a degree to do, I was pretty keen on doing some kind of hardcore game design type of degree. And my dad said to me, okay, look, I know that's what you're passionate about, but maybe pick something that's more general programming just in case. And he was totally right in the end, because while I was very passionate about game design, it became true that programming has given me a number of skills that I thought I wouldn't necessarily have to use, but I really have. So I don't think there's anything wrong with necessarily finding, I mean, I know, for example, AIT has a course that does web design and app design as well. And I think a lot of those skills are very applicable to a career in games, and I would look for when I'm hiring. So if you are keen to placate your parents, you can maybe find a course that sounds a bit more general, but will still get you into the kinds of games work that you want to do in the end.
Yeah, just talk about training. Don't use the word games, and then they'll be fine.
Hang on, how do we use the word training? Give us a sense, what's the concept?
I guess, for example, Liminal is a VR company, and we do VR training, and we do marketing, and we barely mention games, even though fundamentally it's all games. But it's not necessarily the language we use. So for us, for me, it was never a problem. I just never talk about games with my dad, because he'd sort of have a heart attack and fall on the floor. So it's no, it's all training and marketing and stuff. It's all
apps. You can just call them apps if you want. Everyone knows apps make a lot of money. So.
Oh yeah, exactly.
Yeah, make apps, right? And so and that's the thing about for everyone that sort of see some of these presenters present their games, is that, you know, it's not the sort of traditional games that you imagine, right? Because now we're taking the programming skills and game design skills to put it to good use, right? To help, like at the end of the day, you know, a sort of a company anyways, is sometimes to help something, right? Which is educational, or it could be architectural, or it could be experiential, like emotional, right? And so all of that, you know, using, you know, games to sort of like go beyond just your traditional games, right? And so I guess that sort of even answers someone said traditional games, Kimberly. Yeah, so the traditional games is more like the what we call like the games, but now we've got these other games which are like tapping into other sort of areas that help boost different realms out there in the world. So that's also cool, right? Got another question in terms of, yeah, so all these skills that we've learned from, like, let's say coding, and we do games, right? But obviously part of the concerns is like, you know, the employability, and then how does learning games help sort of later on down the line? And so the question is, how has knowing games helped you work on things in other industries, right? And so maybe throw that to back to Langdon. Yeah, knowing games, how has that been utilized in other industries?
Yeah, I guess you kind of expose clients to ideas that they might not have come up with, like from your experience with games, playing games, all that sort of stuff. And things with VR too, like they might come to you, they're trying to solve a particular kind of problem or create a certain emotion, and they'll think that this particular way is the right way to go about it. But from your experience, you'll be able to help guide them down a different path, or say, did you know this is possible? Or have you experienced this sort of thing? And in some cases, you might even steer them away from what they think is the right thing. Like, you know, we might have a client come to us for a VR project, and they're using it just for the novelty of VR, or it might not solve the problem that they're trying to do. So we'll recommend a different solution by going with an app or something like that instead. So I guess it just helps you sort of educate your clients a little bit better. And, you know, yeah, it's a brief summary.
And then I know you guys also do a bit of architectural visualization as well, right? So those clients like using the game technology, but less of like a game, but also like for, you know, real estate, right? Looking at the houses that have yet to be made, and then experiencing using VR to sort of like, you know, look at housing and all that sort of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. It's massively underutilized, that, like being able to go in there, some of our free roam stuff, you can jump in there with your family and walk around a house that's not built, and, you know, change the carpet and the walls and move furniture and do all that sort of stuff. And it just people don't know that stuff exists, and it just blows their mind when they get in there. And I still love that, seeing that, you know, that reaction from people time and time again when they get into VR and do a bit of free roam or any sort of VR, and it just blows their mind what they're seeing in there. It's rewarding to sort of give people those experiences, like you're a little mini drug dealer in a way, just giving them the first hit of VR, and they're like, wow. And I still get a buzz out of it too. Like being in it for so long, it still blows my mind when I chuck a headset on. So
especially the next gen headset.
Yeah, that's right.
It's like, oh my god, the pixels are much better. I thought the last ones was good enough, but now the last one's actually pretty not that good. So, and yeah, for everyone as well, like for the whole world of people that are playing games on, like, you know, your Xbox and PlayStation and Switch, there's a whole world of, you know, these other clients that are also getting games for their business needs, like things that you'll never see, right? But, you know, a lot of businesses use game technology to help them out in their businesses. So they're not like commercially for everyone to have a look, but there's lots happening behind the scenes as well using game tech, right? And then maybe also Nick, where I can pick your brain a bit in terms of, yeah, how has the games sort of like, you used it as a training, like you said, right? And how, and then how has that benefit like a certain sort of industry using your games as a training platform?
Yeah, well, it's interesting. There's one thing that I guess applying game methodologies into an industry that doesn't traditionally think about things in those terms. One thing that it does is challenge the client to think about their whole way of doing their business. So for example, a classic example that you know, the mushroom harvesting project that we did. So you know, we're simulating and we're training people the ideal way to pick a mushroom to do it as fast and as accurately as possible and minimize the chance that you're going to damage the mushroom and not sort of over pick a bed so new mushrooms don't grow the next day. So we're creating this system where simulating mushroom growth and all that. It's pretty. There's a lot more to mushroom harvesting than you might think. It's not just walking around in a forest picking mushrooms.
Yeah.
But like, you know, you ask the client, okay, so what do you want to teach? Like, what's the best practice? What is the perfect technique to pick mushrooms? And then they go away and they spend 3 or 4 weeks debating amongst themselves. Well, what is the best way? How do we want to teach people? Like, what do we want people doing? And it challenges them to sort of look at their systems and refine their process and work out how they're onboarding staff and how they want to integrate something like this and how to leverage the powers of the tech to create efficiencies in their operations. And that is a very, very powerful tool. Like, you know, even regardless of what the outcome is, like whether, you know, the actual process of getting to that outcome is very instructive for any organization. Like with the WorkSafe project, where we're doing a lot of stuff where you're interacting with a virtual human and, you know, scenarios are unfolding before your eyes and you need to react in real time and make decisions. What do you say to this staff member who's on his knees, you know, bawling his eyes out because he's just been, I guess someone has just you know, harassed him or whatever. Like, what do you do, right? And then, okay, so WorkSafe Victoria have got all these guidelines as to how do you handle aggressive conduct for frontline workers interacting with staff members. It's like, okay, they're nice principles. We've got a situation here, we've got a context, and we have a decision in real time that needs to be made. This is what we propose is the right thing to say. And then they go away and then they debate it amongst themselves as well, because they, you know, it's easy to talk at a high level, sort of espousing high level principles, but we're actually getting down to the nitty gritty mechanics of how to navigate these situations. It's a very complicated exercise. And you know, when you actually look at, okay, what is best practice, there's a lot of thinking that needs to go behind that. So like, I find the process of applying game methodologies and simulation into a workplace context, you're really forcing clients to break down the mechanics of what they're doing into very fine details to work out, okay, they'll learn a lot about their operations and shortcomings and, you know, things that are working that you know, that they need to teach that they haven't necessarily thought about before.
Yeah, and that's a good point as well. And, you know, for everyone listening is like, you know, at the end of the day, you know, game studio, you know, they're sort of like an operating business, right? And so working with a lot of clients, helping a lot of clients. And, you know, it is a trend now that a lot of clients are seeking games as sort of like a gamification process to help them in their business, right? They're using this whole new term of gamification to use games to help training, to help simulate, right? And so you can get experience in the job that you do as well. So yeah, once again, it's one of these games that are not like, you know, the traditional gameplay games, but a lot of games that's actually really helpful and training, and then, you know, getting experience by simulations is a whole big frontier of games that you don't normally get to see commercially. But like behind the scenes of every company, there's something like that happening. So that's a good point. My uncle actually wanted me to like, oh, Carlton, how about, you know, we buy a mushroom farm and you just go handle the mushroom farm whilst game deving. So you can like mushroom farm in the morning and just game dev at night. And then they almost tried to like get me in there, but
well, it works. Like our mushroom training program increased the pick rate for new recruits by 3 kilograms an hour. You know, within 2 weeks of training, they
wow.
VR training platform to 5 to 6 hours in total. And that, and compare, they split test that against you know, people who just learned on the job picking and they pick faster.
Nice. So actually upskilled them to do their job better, which is awesome. Excellent. So we just got one last question and then we'll probably almost wrap up. But yeah, I guess this will go across for, I guess we'll ask every panelist once again in terms of, you know, advices for getting into the games industry, right? In terms of what do you look for in someone? And we all know that you need a good portfolio, and you also need to have good interpersonal skills and all that. But in terms of if you envisioned like a portfolio or a skill that you're like, yeah, this is the person that I want to hire, what would that entail? What sort of features of that qualities do you see that you want to hire the next candidate? So maybe start with, let's go back to you, Jack, and this will be a question for everyone, or any advices and tips, right?
Yeah, I'd say in terms of skills that we're actively looking for and are very smiled upon at the moment, networking at the moment, we're doing a lot of stuff that's based in networking and multiplayer solutions. It's becoming more and more prominent with people that we're talking to. I guess that as a skill is something that I find very admirable and something that I look on very nicely. But in terms of from a software standpoint, I don't think I can stress enough how good clean code is. So just someone coming in that really does respect clean code. And I think the best way to look at your coding or anything is don't look at it for yourself, but always look at your code as if you're going to hand it off to someone else in 2 days' time, and they need to be able to read your code base as fast as possible. If someone can show me that they've really spent some time looking in how to architect and clean up their code so it's very easily readable in future, I'd say that's a massive thing for me. Probably more so you can learn all the other skills, but really getting those good foundations in terms of clean code writing is a really big thing in my books.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point, because a lot of game devs, they're like, all right, I'll just code to get something happening and make a game. And then when you look under the hood, it's like, don't look under the hood. But yeah, making sure you have a good clean code is good. And networking as well, that's a good point, because I know like several students that took on networking and learned networking, they all got hired by the game studios afterwards. So game networking, online multiplayer is the secret sauce. So what about you, Ruben?
I mean, networking is a great answer, to be honest, because it's something that we've been upskilling into recently as well. I think, especially when hiring graduates, what I really look at is the projects that they've done, especially like how released they are, all that kind of jazz, what they look like, how good they are, whether they were able to work in a team effectively and still get stuff done, all that kind of stuff. So releasing small games, that's something that I definitely would use to set people apart.
Yeah, and that's a great point as well. Publishing, releasing the games, getting other people to play it, because often when we make games, they're like, oh yeah, we make our games, but we shy away, don't play it. But then, it's those that made games that, yeah, play it, and put it up on like App Store or like, online platforms that get people to play it, and then experiencing basically, completing the game, like getting the game completed, I think is pretty important. So yeah, good point that on the publishing side of things, right? Langdon, what do you look for? What's the ideal thing that wows you when you see portfolios or interviews?
Yeah, as a director, I'm looking for passion in people. Like, maybe, years ago when we hired Jack, he probably stood out because he had a passion for it. Like some people will just go and they'll do the course and they'll come in, and you might get 10 people that have got the same qualification, but some people have just got a certain something about them, and they've got that passion. And that's a massively important thing to me, because if a series of people have all got the same skills, that person with a passion is going to try and learn extra stuff outside of regular work hours. They're going to bring that enthusiasm into the office, and they're going to want to be working on everything, want to learn and absorb as much as they can, and that just makes them great down the line. And they sort of care about the business too, like they've just got that. So definitely the passion is the biggest thing that I'm looking for with people when they come through.
Yeah, no, really good point, right? Passion. And then passion, sometimes it could be heard from your voice, right? And your tonality. And how does that all come about, right? Usually that comes from, first of all, making a good game. And so once you've made a good game, you're proud of your game, right? And because you're proud of your game, you just sort of like ramble on about your game. Oh, look at my game, look at my game. And that shows, right, in the interview, right? And so for those who everyone just needs to make great games. And then once you're proud of your own game, then that passion naturally shines through, and that's what Langdon looks for during your interviews. So make good games. So otherwise, finish it off with Nick. Any advices for you in terms of the hiring process?
I agree with all of that. I guess for me, how someone conducts themselves and communication is critical for me. I guess that's part of a bunch of different. There's a few tiers to my answer. So, for example, if someone seems very personable, and I guess we feel like we're going to be a good fit for the team. That is really important. You don't want to end up with someone who's not quite getting along or gelling with the people who they're working with. So someone who wants to, who's got that sort of personality trait that we're looking for, but also like having an awareness that, okay, if someone's taking you on, like every games company or most games companies that you might apply for are small businesses, and the hiring decision is a very stressful decision for business owners in the games industry, because generally you've got a smallish team. Every addition is having a huge impact on your cash flow. You're going to be playing a very pivotal role, even if you're junior, like in the work that the company is doing and your ability to hit deliverables. So the ability to, so for example, if your boss messages you on Slack or emails you respond, and you don't turn up late to meetings, and you don't and you conduct yourselves appropriately and communicate courteously with everyone around you. Like, that's really, really, really important. And it seems so simple, but it's not, like, a lot of people don't quite get that. The other thing I think is really important, and it comes down to, like, it's a similar point made about the coding standards and clean code. But I say even broader than that, for me, it's just a general awareness of UX and self QA generally. So a lot of people, and again, a lot of seasoned developers, they look at that. This is my next task is to implement this piece of code, to tick off this ticket on the Jira board, and then get it reviewed and ticked off. Great, done. Someone else has looked at it. That's fantastic. But the problem with that is they're not thinking holistically about the user experience and the outcomes that you're trying to drive at in implementing this holistic product. And who is the user? How are they going? What does your design decision have on the end user and on the intuitive nature of the product that you're delivering, on the enjoyability levels? So, like, if I say, well, we need to put a plant in the corner of this room, it's like, it's not just put a plant there and tick, done. It's like how you do it, taking care and QA, like providing a build that's broken for review, wastes everyone's time, or if there's fundamental user experience design issues, then the impact of that on management is someone reviews it. There's like a series of bugs that are obvious. It's almost embarrassing to bring them up. You spend 45 minutes collating a long list of feedback of things you want rectified. Then you have a meeting, then someone has to go through all the feedback and then ticket that on Jira, and then someone has to implement it, and then someone has to QA it. You lose days just by if you don't sort of take that care to implement things appropriately and self QA what you're doing. That can have a huge impact. And being a business, that can affect the bottom line. That can affect the viability of your ongoing role. If you have a project blowout that's avoidable, that puts that has a huge impact on any game studio. So, like, thinking you're not going through games role, you're applying for membership and being a participant in a business that needs to survive and be viable and deliver a product that's high quality for an end user. And that is a really, I think, very few people understand that at first blush. So coming into the games industry, like the more seasoned people, I think, get it eventually. But I think that's something that's really important to understand.
Wow, that's an excellent point. And I think for all that, it's more just like, be willing to listen to feedback, right? And so for everyone that's listening, QA is quality assurance, right? And quality assurance is getting people to sort of like see your work and test your work. And then I guess next point is like, how do we get good at that? And the way to get good at that is like, often you will have to sort of make revisions to your work, right? You have to do it again or fix this and fix that, right? And obviously there's some who are like, oh, more work, but then you know what next after is that, okay, I'll make it better so that people like it, right? And you make products that are, you know, it's experience product, right?
It's almost one step further than that though. It's preventing that issue from being an issue in the first place with careful implementation, and you know, that's the quality of the code, the UX design consideration, and there's no like game designers in my mind. That if you're a programmer, like and you're building a game at the programming level, or if you're an artist or an animator, you're all game designers. You're making decisions along the way, and you know, that requires a care and appreciation of what it is that you're building and what the goal is and what the outcome is you're striving for.
Yeah. So yeah, to sum it all up, we've got clean code, we've got passion, right, and willing to listen to feedback, and then also team working, right? And then so yeah, all that comes into play when, you know, making a game or being like sort of someone that the employers would be excited to hire you. So and cool, I guess that sort of wraps up all our talk for tonight. And so I just want to thank again to our panelists, right? And so if everyone could just give them appreciation with another one on the chat box. So just press some ones on the chat box. So thanks again to Ruben, and thanks Nick, and thanks Jack, and thanks Langdon for their time here with us tonight to share with us, you know, some really great insights into the world of game making, which I hope everyone got something really valuable out of it, right? And so I just want to thank everyone once again. So thank you so much for taking the time to be with us tonight. I know everyone's hungry, but it's dinner time right now. Now, I'll just sort of like, before I send the panelists off, I just want to remind everyone that we are going to do a quick session, probably another 10-15 minute session, just for more details on our course as well. So if you're interested in our courses in terms of game design, well, not even games, but then film and then animation and 3D, stick around because that's up next. But otherwise, we'll probably let our industry panelists part ways for now. So thanks again. And then, thanks Ruben, thanks Nick, thanks Jack.
Thanks a lot, everyone.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
See you guys. Thank you.
See you.
So I guess, we'll just jump to one final quick session towards the end, and I'll introduce you to Anthony. And I know if, Juliet is still here, but if you're here, feel free to pop on.
Hi.
Hey.
So before everyone runs away, if you're not a student and you're looking into courses and you're wondering what we teach you, just stick around. So it'll be another 10 minutes and we'll just give you a bit more of an idea on what you'll actually be studying, but I thought I'd just mention that now before everyone sort of shoots off. So we might as well just get straight into it. It's 7:43, so I'll share my screen. So I hope there's still people around. I'm not just pretending in front of you, Carlton. But yeah, so this part's just for anyone who's like still searching into where to study, what to do, what AIT teaches, all that sort of stuff. So yeah, we won't be too long, but this is just going to give you a bit more of a rundown and sort of where AIT comes into all of this. So what you can do is you can do a Bachelor of Interactive Media where you major in games design, or you can do a Bachelor of IT where you major in games programming. So it just depends on what side of the brain you are, or what you're sort of where your interest lies more. So if you do the IT degree, you're doing a lot more code, sort of heavy stuff. If you're doing the interactive media degree, you're doing a lot more of the sort of visual aspect, but it does cross over in both. What we're all about is sort of giving students a real diverse sort of skill set. So there might be a couple of things where you're like, okay, I really don't want to do that, but it's all there on purpose, basically. Like, we're going to teach you things because we know that you sort of have to know it or have to have at least some sort of skill in that area. So you probably noticed with the guys from Red Cartel how they mentioned the word Unity a lot. They mentioned the word Unreal a lot. So what we actually do with our courses is we just simulate what companies are doing, basically. Obviously not to such a rigorous scale as to what those guys are doing. It's not like you're going to jump in and do some really intense, difficult, long painstaking things straight away. But all the projects that you work on is going to be reflective on what companies do. So the software you're using is going to be the same software that companies use, which is why it's all put in place in a particular way where you will be using Unity, you will be using Unreal, because that's what you sort of have to know. We do have a bit of theory in this, but it's not very theory heavy. It's going to be really practical from start to finish, basically. So what you do is you start from the initial idea of just literally pencil and paper. What's your game going to look like? What's the point of it? What's the story you're trying to, portray through it? All the way to the very, very end of the fully sort of finished product, which you will then eventually showcase and showpiece and present to an industry panel. So what you do is you make 6 games throughout the degree. The first couple are, just kind of introducing that sort of way of thinking and that skill set and all that sort of stuff. Then your 6th game, your last game, you actually present to an industry panel, which is called the Forge program, where you might present your game in front of Luminal or Red Cartel or a panel of a combination of different companies. It's not just Luminal, Red Cartel, and Nomos that you're going to be presenting in front of. We've got a lot of other partners as well. But these guys will mark your game. So Carlton is, for you guys, anyone there doesn't know, Carlton is the games course coordinator. So Carlton and all the other sort of games teachers will be your mentors through that last project, but it'll be industry that actually mark you. So that's why we've got people like Jack who have jumped into work with Red Cartel so easily, because they're doing this sort of project portfolio-based work throughout the degree, and then they present it in front of games industry before they even finish. So we try to make that transition from study to work a lot more sort of streamlined than it sort of can be in other traditional sort of universities and stuff like that. So you'll be doing basically Unreal and Unity in terms of the more fun game software. You'll be doing a bit of C#, a bit of C++ as well for the more coding stuff. If you hate the idea of code, you will do 3 subjects of code in the interactive media degree, just because we know you have to have that skill set as well. But there's a little bit of perseverance there, but you'll probably, most students actually find that I actually really like it.
And I just want to jump in there if that's okay, because I know throughout this talk, there's a lot of mention in terms of coding, and it almost seems like games is like coding. And just to sort of when I first, heard of it, is like, coding is it's such a technical thing. And then coding is boring, but game coding is actually really exciting. It's like a whole different world of coding, right? When you're making stuff move and shoot and then explode and pick up stuff, that's actually really fun, right? Like traditional if you're using programming and coding, it sounds dry, but when making games, it's actually really exciting. And so it's a different world of programming side of things that you see that actually, if you like games, it excites you.
It depends what you're coding for, I suppose, But it's not to be afraid of just algorithm or just numbers. It's like there's purpose behind it, and whatever the purpose is going to reflect whether you like it or not. It depends on what the outcome is. But with the more 3D art side, you're going to be using more Maya, which is like your 3D models, ZBrush, which is like wrinkles and sort of texturing within those models, and then Substance, which is making the color of it look like an actual color. So like in the picture here, the girl's hair looks like hair, not just some random yellow. That's all done through Substance. So that's basically the crux of the course. In terms of sort of what the course looks like in terms of practical wise. So you got a fair bit of flexibility on what you want to do with us. So the bachelor is 3 years. It can be shorter or it can be quite longer. It just depends on how many subjects you want to do per intake, the May, September or February intake. The diploma is basically the first year of the bachelor, and the associate degree is year 1 and 2. So you can enroll into the bachelor. If you finish the first year, you can graduate there with a diploma, or if you finish the associate degree and the dream job comes up or whatever, you can graduate with an associate degree. So you're not locked into doing the bachelor just because that's what you're enrolled into. You can kind of finish earlier if you want to, or if you're a little bit more reserved, you can enroll into the diploma first, finish that, graduate, and then just continue on if you want to. So we're not going to lock you into sort of anything. It's entirely up to you guys and sort of how you want to construct your degree. in terms of what qualification that is. But obviously, the more you study, the more you're going to know, which is going to, you know, make that transition from study to work a bit easier because you're going to have a lot more skills under your belt. But the main thing of that bachelor is presenting in front of industry panel and refining that sort of last sort of project that you do, that last game that you make. You can put the whole thing onto fee help if you want to, if you're a domestic student. So no stress about sort of pay and all that stuff. You're not going to be doing exams really, so there's no textbooks or anything. All the software that you need is part of the enrollment. So if you're a domestic student out there, you've literally just enroll, put it on fee help, and the only thing you really have to pay for is anything that you sort of want for your own personal use, whether it's a laptop or something. So yeah, if you go 4 subjects every intake, it can be done in 2 years. If you go anything less, then that just depends on what you're doing. But the traditional way is just to do 8 subjects in a year, and that's 1 year knocked off. So bachelor would take 3 years. So in terms of subjects and all that sort of stuff, Carlton, did you want to sort of talk to this a little bit more in terms of subjects?
Sure. Yeah, and also we just got a question from Joseph in terms of ATAR, right? So any sort of ATAR requirements for doing the course?
Yeah, so we actually don't require an ATAR. We used to, but we actually got rid of it because you don't really do anything sort of too close to this when you're in high school. So all we actually need is your high school graduation paper or a Cert 3 or anything higher. If you don't, or if you want to leave sort of school earlier, or if you didn't finish year 12, you can enroll with a portfolio. So that can be anything that you want it to be, really, just any drawings, any artwork, any paintings, if you've had a crack at Photoshop, if you've done edits, if you've got a YouTube channel or whatever, just anything that shows a level of dedication, level of interest. It can be half finished things, as long as we can see what your sort of thoughts are and that you've actually got a bit of drive behind you. And then that's all we need. But if you're at high school right now and you're looking to finish high school, then jump on with us. Don't stress too much about how you go on the exams, because we actually don't look at the marks or anything. You actually get your high school graduation paper before you go into the exams, and that's all we need. So yeah.
Yeah, and because we expect everyone to come in anyway, to have no experience in anything, because we teach you from scratch anyway, right? So we expect everyone to start from the beginning. And so all your previous like maths and science, that doesn't apply to these areas anyway. And so hence why the ATAR is sort of removed. But yeah, all you want is your passion, right? That you are excited to study in this. So yeah, hopefully we can see that through, show us some things that you're passionate about, and then we know that you're excited to sort of study in this field, right? Otherwise, yeah, just a quick overview of our courses. So, you know, we've got our interactive media, or actually got 2 degrees. We've got IT degree and interactive media degree. So the IT is more coding, and then the interactive media, you know, throughout our talk, we mentioned that game making, you need to it's good to sort of know a bit of everything else as well, because game takes, you have to do everything, right? You got to do, like someone mentioned, marketing. How do you do marketing? You got to do like Facebook ads and video trailers and all that sort of thing. You do animation. You know, if you don't know drawing, then getting good at a bit of drawing is also important, especially to communicate ideas and all that. And so storytelling. And so games encompass so many things that it's important to sort of like, you know, give a try at everything. And sometimes you don't even know what you want to do. And through doing the subjects, you actually discover what you like. It's like, oh, I actually really enjoy this, right? After you sort of do it, because I didn't go into coding. I didn't grow up wanting to be coding. I did coding, and then it's like, oh yeah, I actually like coding. It's like, but you know, I was like, you know, previously, you know, from the studies of animation, right? Oh, I want to make things animate and do cool art stuff. But then once you touch into coding, it's like, oh yeah, I think I like coding. So yeah, you never know until you sort of does that subject that you realize that you have a knack for those things, right? But in terms of our game design course, so this is our game design course. We do a lot of things, but in terms of games, right, we do a bit of game design, so game design theory, where you learn game design principles, which is important to help the game designers make better games, right? Because if you want to be a game designer, you need to know, you know, the game design principles. It's not just coming out of ideas out of thin air, but applying what's been, you know, what are the laws of good game design, right? And you need to know that to make some good games, right? Then we've got some game development and advanced game development. So learning some game engines, so using game engines to code up the game. So there's 2 sides. There's coding games and making art for games, right? So we got the 3D game assets as well. You can see highlighted here. So learning how to make 3D art assets, cool characters, cool weapons, cool environment, level design, and all the art side of things, right? Because the game needs art. And then you also learn the coding side of things where you get to code the game to do like all kinds of cool things like first-person shooters, shoot 'em up games, hack and slash character games, like we walk around and RPG and up your skills and all that sort of thing, and all that you do throughout the course. And then ultimately towards the end, you also have the Forge, which is not highlighted at the bottom. The Forge is like your final project, and your final project is often the client brief, where now you've made a lot of games, you've made a lot of art. Let's put you to the test with some client briefs. And then we got, students before working on client, external clients, and then and then at the same time, that also helps them get recognized at times. And then, it's fun times. Well, next slide.
Next slide. So you can, so we've got 3 intakes in the year. So Feb, May, September. The next one's coming up is September. So, you're more than welcome to start September, do a couple of subjects if you want to, and then sort of pick up more next year. Usually with the February intake, they start with 2 subjects. So it's not like you're starting at a sort of with a heavy load or anything like that. But yeah, you've got flexibility on when you want to start, how many subjects you want to do each intake and stuff like that. A little bit different for internationals just because of student visas and stuff like that. So if you have particular international questions, that that team can sort of help you out a little bit more with that. So if you are looking to apply, all you really need to do, well, not all you need to do, but the starting point is you can put through an application, which you can do through that QR code as well. So what we usually need is a copy of your passport and either your HSC or your Cert 3 or anything higher, or you can just send us your portfolio and then we can sort of send it to the academic team for approval. But you don't have to worry about that sort of straight away. And then, but you can just put through an application, then we can sort of help you process in the back end as well. We usually ask for docs to be like certified as well, so like signed by a JP or a police officer, or you can pop into campus and we can sign off on it as well. If you do want to come into campus, we do have an open day on the 14th of August as well. So that'll be running from 10 to 2. So it'll be a bit more of a sort of showpiece day in terms of what the campus is like and all the sort of fun things that we have with the AR, VR headsets and stuff going and all that as well. But yeah, feel free to apply through the website or through that code, or if you're an international student, just shoot an email to international@ait.edu.au.
And it's good to just take a phone and just sort of like QR code scan it, leave it at the backlogs of your phone, and then when the time comes, at least you'll keep a copy of that link, and if anyone's interested in applying, then
exactly. So if that wasn't like enough detail for you, or if you got specific questions or need any sort of particular info, you can always just text one of us. So we're the enrollment advisors, so we're basically here to sort of help with that transition from looking into where to study to studying with us. So that's what you want to do. So you can always just send us a text or just give us a call or shoot through an email. If you want a private campus tour and don't necessarily want to come into the busy open day, then we're happy to show you around campus anytime as well. But that's pretty much it from us tonight. If you are into animation or mobile apps, we do have those 2 info sessions next week as well, which will be sort of a similar sort of context to what we did tonight in terms of how it will run and everything. But yeah, if you are looking to study or anything or have any questions, just feel free to contact us, and I'm looking forward to hearing from you.
Awesome. Yeah, take a photo of this picture, and then how cool is that? Now that we can just message up if you ever have any questions, just text us, and then someone will get in touch with you and answer all the questions that you have. Anyways, thanks so much everyone for sticking around, and thanks Anthony for sharing us the course details. So but otherwise, hopefully everyone enjoyed the night, right? Learned a lot of cool things about game making, right? And got some insights, and hopefully there's also two more events coming up. Animation, we got like Lego Monkey Kid. I'm a fan of Monkey King, so that's happening next week, so definitely tune in for that. And then if you're thinking about mobile apps, there's also one coming up next week as well. So at the same time, sort of like next week, Wednesday, Thursday. So definitely tune in for that. I think we have the links sort of in the link in the chat box. So yeah, just click on that link and then keep it in your tabs somewhere and then register if you're interested. And yeah, it's always exciting to learn from the game industry as well on all the cool projects that they do. But yeah, otherwise, it's now 8 o'clock. So I guess we'll finish off today. So thanks once again for staying back and then yeah, tuning in and giving us your attention. And we hope that yeah, we had your fun night and maybe see some of you a bit later on as well. So thanks again, and that's it from us. Thank you.
See you guys soon.
Thanks Ange, thanks Sen, and yeah, thanks Maya, thanks Sijun, Tristan, Mag, and the list. We got Giovanni, Joseph, Bethany, everyone. Thank you. Yeah.